And so you can control your driving, but if someone else causes a crash and they don't have much for insurance, you're out of luck unless you have underinsured coverage. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Leah. How are you today, Leah?
I'm well, and you?
I'm good. Man, this summer weather just doesn't end.
No, it doesn't feel like October for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm kind of getting ready for winter at the homestead. I had to do one of my least favorite tasks this last weekend. I had to clean out the chimney, and it's not because it builds up with creosote, which is so we have a wood stove or wood heater in our house, but I get birds build nests in that thing every spring, and they pack it full usually. And that's really kind of just a pain in the butt because they get in there and then you can't use it anymore because then it smokes out the house. Yeah. So you get to about May, you get one of those warm days and the birds decide they're going to build nests, or they crawl in there and then they can't get back out again. So I disconnected the chimney on the inside of the house, which is kind of a pain. It's kind of messy because wood smoke, like wood ash, is like really, really fine and powdery, and it just kind of like mists in the air. So I took it apart, and they had stuffed it to the very top, and I couldn't pull it down. I have a rod with a kind of a hook on it. So then I had to go to Plan B and crawl on the roof, and my wife hates it when I go on the roof. And
you strap yourself to the chimney?
No, but it's flat, but it's kind of precarious getting to it because it's about 30 feet on the lower end, but I went up from the upper end, and I used 2 ladders, and I got up there, and I had my boys holding the ladder and got up there and got it done. But my wife was not happy. And when I was up there, so she was in the house and I could talk down to her through the chimney, and she was saying, "Don't fall off," or whatever. And I'm like, "Do you want to know where the gold is buried? Just in case I do." She's like, "No, you don't have any gold." I'm like, "Well, you'll never know, will you?"
The gold is all up here in your mind,
right,
Craig.
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So got that ready to go, and then my wife texted me today and said a bird was in the chimney.
Well, it's summer still, right? So
yeah.
to the birds.
Fortunately, they're not building nests this time of year, but they get in there, and sometimes if you open the door, they'll crawl out. They'll go out the door or the chimney. Otherwise, they meet their demise in there. Anyway, so yeah, that time of year, getting firewood ready, getting ready for the winter, heating season. I'm kind of ready for cool nights.
Yeah, can't even have a bonfire with the heat all day and night.
Yeah, it's been very unseasonably warm. And I've also been getting closer to taking my test for my CDL.
Yeah, how's that going?
Good. I'm about 3/4 of the way through my driving hours. I have my test scheduled, I think, a week from Tuesday. So there's 3 big parts of the CDL exam. There's the pre-trip, which is basically you going down the list of all the things you got to checking your air brakes, your lights, turn signals, checking airlines, things like that, components of the tractor, trailer, going through all that. And then I've pretty much got that memorized. And then the second part is you have to do 4 parking lot maneuvers. One is you have to be able to pull up and stop within like a 3-foot spot and know where the front of your tractor is at. That's kind of hard because it kind of sticks out there a ways. And then you have to be able to back up, how far it is, 100 and some feet, be able to back in a straight line. That's not really too hard. And then the third one is you have to pull forward and you have to get the back wheel on the trailer between a cone and a line on the ground. So it's kind of it's like if you turn onto a road at an intersection that you don't go up on the curb. It's kind of testing your ability to not hit the curbs. So that's 3. And then the hardest one, the 4th one, is kind of like a parallel parking.
Wow.
Backing into a blind alleyway or docking spot is kind of the trick. And that has been the most challenging for me, but I've been studying YouTube videos, getting ready. So, and then just doing a lot of driving. So then, the second part is doing those 4 maneuvers. And then the third part is to do the actual going out on the road. And they're just checking your safety, your ability to be watching for traffic, use your mirrors, not speed, not hit curbs when you curve. Ability to shift, upshift, downshift, all that kind of stuff.
And for that test, are you going to take a semi?
We test with the same truck that we've been practicing with, which is really nice. A lot of people will practice with a much smaller truck, like a semi what we call a day cab. It doesn't have the big sleeper on the back of it.
Oh, okay.
And a shorter trailer. The one we test with is a full-length trailer and a full-length semi with a cab on it, and with the sleeper on it, you can't look out. You can't look through the back window on it.
Ah.
And so they're like, well, we don't want to test you. We don't want to train you and test you with an easier truck than you might use on the road. So we kind of test with I would say on the more difficult side of things, being able to get, which I appreciate, but part of me just wants, give me an easy truck to drive, get the test done, get my license. And then, so that's going good. And I'm scheduled to drive. I think I'll be driving in La Crosse, maybe next Friday. So watch out, everyone.
Yeah. Is it 53 that runs through downtown?
It depends which route you take. Yeah, I don't know which route they take. We'll start on the south side and then go north, get the interstate. I think we'll go through the way station out by West Salem. So yeah, I've driven a lot of like windy backcountry roads around Viroqua, Prairie du Chien, Boscobel. Went down to DeSoto, went up the DeSoto Hill, and yeah, getting pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
So now I just got to hope I don't brain fart on the day of the test and have to take part of it again.
Yes. Well, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
I hope it goes well, and he'll be road legal soon enough.
Yeah.
CDL.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So, yeah, I'm excited about that. Yeah, I'm excited to have that license. And if I fail part of it, I'll just have to come back. Unfortunately, be after a trial. I have a 2-week trial coming up here at the end of the month. Going to take a lot of my time and energy, so it may have to be pushed into November if I don't pass. So trying hard to pass.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We'll pass.
Trying hard to pass.
So we have seen some recent accidents around where you live involving commercial and non-commercial vehicles.
Yeah.
Do you want to briefly kind of tell us about that?
Yeah. So the one was very close to where I live over by Cashton, which is in Monroe County, south of Sparta. And so for those that may not be familiar, so a lot of the dairy farms, especially dairy farms and grain farms, but dairy farms especially, how the farm operates, how manure is handled, how feed is brought in has changed a lot since I was a kid. We talked a little bit about this last week. Now farms are bigger, fields are bigger, they're hauling farther away, and so a lot of your haylage and your corn silage. Now this time of year, everyone's chopping corn, so you're seeing a lot of both tractors and carts, but as well as straight trucks and semis and trailers hauling corn silage. They're driving right out in the field next to the chopper. The chopper is chopping the corn directly into the truck, and then they're hauling it back to the farm, and they're typically dumping them on large piles, bunkers.
Rather than the silo that we talked about.
Correct, yep. And so there's a lot of truck traffic, and there are exemptions that apply to farmers and employees of farmers, in as much as you don't always have to get a CDL to drive a commercial truck. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. If you work for like a custom operation where you're chopping for others or you're hauling manure for others, then those drivers have to have a valid CDL. But if you're employed by a farmer and you're just hauling that farmer's crops or manure, you actually, at least in Wisconsin, for the most part, don't have to have a CDL. So this last weekend, I think it was just within the last few days, we were actually in church at the time, and about 3/4 of the way through Mass, there's a number of first responders are in our church. Their pagers went off, and I heard a serious accident on Highway 27. And so we kind of knew it was bad, and so they sent these guys out to direct traffic and had the helicopter in. And so we had heard, I think, initially that it involved a commercial truck of some sort. And my mind immediately went to about a silage truck got into a crash. They're pulling on and off the roadways, getting in and out of fields. And that's a major thing that we need to be aware of from a safety standpoint, both as farmers and truckers, but also as people, the public sharing the roadways. That is so different than 20 years ago. You just have trucks, big equipment getting in and off the road. And I would say some of those people never had CDL training, are young, or whatever. And so it turned out to be the case here. Took a little bit. They had the highway shut down for much of the day on an accident like this, do a much more thorough accident reconstruction and stuff like that. So essentially what had happened is, as I understand it, now this is still a little bit preliminary. This is, I think, based on the sheriff's report. But basically what they said was that, and this happened, so it was about 10:45 a.m. there was a local resident was driving his SUV and it was pulling a trailer, and he was stopped to turn left. So I think he was heading, I guess, west on Highway 27 and was going to turn left into his driveway. And then coming up behind him was a car, and she was slowing up for this guy that was stopping to turn left. And then behind her was a semi. Turned out to be a farm, silage truck. And apparently the lady that was stopped behind the guy that was turning saw in a rearview mirror that this truck wasn't going to stop, and like literally, I guess, pulled out of the way. I don't know if they went to the right or the left. I'm guessing out on the shoulder, probably.
Yeah, I think the article said to the right, and we're able to
avoid it. And fortunately for her, she did, because the semi rear-ended the gentleman who was trying to turn left, and the tractor, I think the cab came off the tractor, and the driver of the truck was actually ejected. So the driver of the semi was the one most badly injured. I'm not sure if anyone else was actually injured. I'm just trying to think. Oh yeah, one of the people had to be extricated from their vehicle. So what was interesting about this one is the driver of the truck was 17.
Yeah, I noticed that. Very young.
Yeah. What was interesting about it, I'm not going to put his name, but he's from Mauston. And I believe that the farm, I think I know who the farm was that had the truck, was local. And I would be surprised if this kid was an employee of the farming company or the farm. Maybe, I don't know. But you can't get a CDL until you're 18. You have to be 18 to get a CDL. And you have to be 21 to operate interstate, so like to drive across state lines. So presumably, I'm going to assume this kid didn't have a CDL, and maybe it's legal. I don't know. We don't really know that yet. And probably, I guess we don't know this yet, probably wasn't wearing a seatbelt since he was ejected. That's one thing I've noticed a lot since I started down the road of getting my CDL. I remember, and I've always been a seatbelt user myself. It's not something I really, especially with kids. I mean, I just don't go without a seatbelt, right? But they just hammered that into us in the CDL training. But it always amazes me because I follow a lot of truckers online on like TikTok and YouTube, and I'm shocked at how many don't wear seatbelts even when they're out on the open road, which just sounds like a bad idea to me.
Yeah.
Right. So no, would it have made a difference if you had a seatbelt on? Who knows? And maybe he did, but if the cab literally came apart, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. I don't know. But he was airlifted to, I think, Rochester. Haven't heard, hopefully okay. I haven't heard that anyone passed away. So could have been much, much worse. But, it's just a prime example of things that I talk about a lot and I worry about, is just when you're sharing the roads with people that are probably maybe inexperienced, maybe not trained as much as, other truckers might be. You just really got to be paying attention. And hats off to this lady who saw this coming and took evasive action, because it could have been really bad for her. I think she was on a little Subaru. So the first guy that was pulling in, I think, had a Volkswagen SUV, but the lady had a Subaru Outback, I think. Yeah. So that could have been really bad for her if she got pancaked between the semi and the vehicle ahead of her. So
with the seatbelts, I have a question. So inside the cab, is there a system that goes off like in modern cars where it beeps or it says like ding 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 or anything?
I don't think so. I haven't been in a lot of trucks. I've been in the one that we use. It doesn't. And like when we're doing like the backing maneuvers, like off property, we typically don't put our seatbelts on. But I don't think they do. I don't think they have the same alarm systems and warnings. They must not, because maybe you can bypass them or disconnect them. I don't know. But yeah. So wear your seatbelts if you're driving a truck, please.
Yes.
You don't want to be ejected from those things.
So talking about the folks involved, so they're maybe working, maybe not working, the truck driver. Is there some point about insurance that would come up, like for the woman who did the evasive action or the person that's trailer got affected? What kind of claim would they potentially have, you think?
Yeah. So almost certainly, let's say the first gentleman who's in the vehicle trying to turn left, he's going to have, if he was injured, or even if he has property damage, which he does, but let's say he was injured, his first step would be to look at the insurance for for the truck. Hopefully there's insurance on the truck. Typically, I think for most commercial motor vehicles, they're required to carry at least $750,000 in liability limits, I believe. That may be different for like farm trucks. I'm not sure if those, like I said, farmers and farm employees are typically exempt from the CDL rules. I don't know if there are similar exemptions when it comes to insurance.
Yep.
But hopefully and presumably, the farm had some sort of a commercial auto policy. I'd be surprised if they don't have that. So that would be kind of the first step. And that is probably, like I said, if they had a commercial auto policy of some sort on the truck, it's going to be significant and probably more than anyone has on their car. But let's say it's not. Let's say the person was badly injured and there's 750,000 on the truck. Then the next thing would be to look at his underinsured coverage. So what insurance he had on his own vehicle. He would also probably be eligible for med pay coverage under his auto policy. It's usually a small amount. It can help cover things like ambulance rides, emergency room visits, and especially if you have health insurance, you can use that for co-pays and out-of-pockets, deductibles, and things like that. That's one thing we try to help our clients with, is to try to use that med pay to really go as far as possible by using it to augment health insurance if you have health insurance. So that's kind of the two insurance. And same thing for the woman. She would have a claim. If, let's say, she went off the road and was injured, she would similarly have a claim because presumably the kid driving the truck was either going too fast, not paying attention, something like that, maybe on the phone. Big no-no being on the phone.
Yep.
You're not supposed to be on your phone when you're driving a truck. I imagine those rules apply to farmers just like everyone else, even if they're quote-unquote exempt from the CDL requirement. You're still required to follow the rules regarding those trucks. Same thing with like inspections and stuff like that. So probably there was some fault there. Now maybe he had a medical episode. Maybe something mechanical went wrong on the truck. So there's different possibilities, but good chance that he's just not paying attention or whatever. And so she would have a claim against that policy. Now the kid, I say a kid, is 17. So that's a kid to me. A kid is 17. Depending on the situation, workers' comp is even if the crash is his fault, you have workers' comp. Hopefully they have workers' comp. Now, again, with a lot of things, farmers can be exempt from workers' comp. So depending on, so there's different things, and especially because he's a minor, there may be questions about maybe the farmer's commercial or like farm policy or something like that has some exposure. I don't know. So yeah, lots of different moving pieces there.
Yeah. Can you tell us about that second story that's kind of been top of mind for you?
Yeah. So the other one, and I saw this because I was in the grocery store. I hadn't heard about this crash, but I was in the grocery store, and how kind of near the entrance they'll have like posters for auctions and fundraisers and benefits. And so I was walking by and I saw one. I looked, and it was a fundraiser coming up for a young man. I think he's not 17. I think he was in his 30s, has a wife and 2 small children, looks like. But I think he was a logger. I think he's a logger, and he was a passenger in a semi driven by his dad. Not sure what they were hauling. I think I saw maybe they were hauling a skidder on a lowboy or something like that. But it sounds like his dad was driving the semi, and this guy was a passenger, and another, they call them four-wheelers. So the truckers all call non-semis four-wheelers. So a four-wheeler.
The trucking community is not like an ATV.
That's right. Yeah. So a car or a SUV missed a stop sign and basically T-boned the passenger side of the semi, and the guy that was in the passenger side was pretty badly hurt. And this is all based on, this is stuff on the stuff they have. There's a Facebook page and stuff. I guess the weather was bad. They couldn't bring in the helicopter. They couldn't land a helicopter down there, so they had to drive them by ambulance to Madison. I think this happened in maybe rural Richland County or Monroe County, kind of out in the sticks a little bit. So had to take a trip to Madison, and had a number of broken bones and I believe some internal injuries. So they're doing a fundraising event for them. Unfortunately, it's like the weekend before my trial starts. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to go down for it, but if people are interested in helping that family, we'll go ahead and put a link to the benefit. They have a page, and they're having maybe a dance and auction, live auction and stuff. I think it's in Ontario, Wisconsin coming up in a couple weeks. So, but you can donate. So if people want to donate to that family, a lot of medical expenses, a lot of daycare expenses for the kids. She has to help take care of him and transportation back and forth, I think, to Madison. So if people want to help that family out, we'll put a link in the description to that. Yeah, please help support them.
Yeah. So the question I have would be, would this be considered work for the father? Was it the father's business and the father's logging truck, or just how does that complicate this if they're a passenger?
So if you're going to be involved in a crash, it helps to be the passenger, because pretty much under all circumstances you have no fault, right? You can't really control, you don't have any ability to control the crash, right? It's going to depend a lot on the circumstances of who owned the truck and this person's relationship to the owner of the truck. Now, if he owned the truck, if they had like an LLC or something like that, which it sounds like maybe there was, the question will be, does he have workers' comp coverage? Right. If he has workers' comp coverage, that's going to be the most natural starting point, is to pursue a workers' comp claim.
Why that first and not personal injury?
Well, you don't have to choose one or the other. Workers' comp tends to be, it starts paying out right away. Whereas with a liability claim, you tend to have to wait, right? So, and we often handle those. So like we have these all the time. We'll have what's called a workers' comp claim, and then we call it a third party claim. Why do we call it a third party claim? Well, because let's say the facts were a little different and his dad who was driving, let's say that his dad missed the stop sign and it was his dad's fault or his co-employee's fault, right?
Yes.
In that case, you'd have a workers' comp claim if there's workers' comp coverage, but it's called the exclusive remedy. So you can't pursue a claim against the driver who is a co-employee because you're barred by the exclusive remedy provision. Okay, you only get what workers' comp provides, right? That isn't going to necessarily be the case here, because it doesn't sound like the driver of the semi was probably at fault. But that is one of the things that comes up the most in these situations is if there's fault involved by your employer or co-employee or something like that, the workers' comp exclusive remedy provision is going to limit what you can recover. Okay, but it does provide benefits. They're all kind of like set up by statute. They pay quickly, cover medical expenses, lost earnings, things like that you don't necessarily get in a say a personal injury claim or auto claim, because that usually doesn't happen until the end when there's one payout, right? But certainly there will be a claim available against the driver of the vehicle, the four-wheeler, right? That's what they have liability insurance for, right? And hopefully they had a lot of liability insurance, because this person's going to has a very significant claim here. So there will be a claim against that person's insurance company. Depending on the amount of the liability limits, maybe those get paid right away, maybe not. If workers' comp pays this person benefits, they will have usually what we call a right of subrogation. So they'll actually have a right to get partially reimbursed from the tortfeasor, the driver, and their insurance company if there is coverage available. And then and this is the unknowns, because I don't know enough about the situation. But then you got workers' comp, you got insurance on the other car, and then sort of the next line of you'd be looking for as an attorney is there any underinsured motorist coverage? There may be underinsured motorist coverage on the commercial truck policy. I'm not certain if most commercial truck policies carry underinsured coverage or not. I believe it has to be offered in Wisconsin, at least the way that auto underinsured coverage is, but that goes on top of any liability insurance limits that's available from whoever caused a crash or an accident. That's on your own policy. In that case, on the case of the truck, if the semi itself had an auto policy and had underinsured benefits, you may look to that. Possibly his own personal auto provides underinsured coverage. So let's say he has a pickup truck. Most people do. There may be exclusions that apply to one or more of those, especially his own personal auto policy, but you don't know. So that's why one of the first things that we do in these kinds of cases is let's get all the insurance. Let's look at the policies. What are the potential coverages? What are the exclusions? Try to put together the maximum amount of insurance coverage you can for people, especially when they're severely injured like this person was.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last comment is, Craig, so for families with small trucking or farming businesses, what's the main takeaway from these stories and from our discussion about where to look for compensation potentially?
Yeah. Know your insurance agent. And, I think it's, liability is usually going to be, you're getting liability coverage, which means if you cause an accident, it's protecting you and your company, your assets from coverage. But make sure you ask if we have uninsured or underinsured coverage so that if someone else causes a crash, really, really important to find out if that's available and how much it costs. Check with your own personal auto, see if you would be covered. Like if this guy had been driving the truck, there may be an exclusion that applies to his own his own personal auto policy that may not apply because he's a passenger, right? So know what your coverage is. Do not waive underinsured coverage unless you just absolutely can't afford it. But it's really important coverage is to have underinsured. Be aware of whether you have workers' comp. Definitely don't waive workers' comp unless you've really looked into it, because this is the kind of example where you want to have it. Workers' comp can be really important to have for you and your employees. So that would probably be the biggest things to keep in mind.
So now I have to reach out to my insurance person and get that uninsured coverage.
Yeah. That's the one thing I harp on as much as possible, because that's something you can control. You can't control what everyone else has for insurance. I think we're only required to have, is it $25,000 or $50,000 in insurance coverage in the state of Wisconsin? That's not near enough coverage if you're badly injured at all, right? And so you can control your driving, but if someone else causes a crash and they don't have much for insurance, you're out of luck unless you have underinsured coverage. And it's usually pretty affordable once you've purchased liability coverage for yourself. To add on, a good underinsured coverage doesn't cost that much more. And it's a terrible way to save money, to cut corners in the underinsured, because that really is what protects you from other drivers that you don't have a say in how much insurance they have.
Well, in the comments, viewers, you could maybe write if you wanted to see us to talk about insurance on a future episode.
Yeah.
I think that'd be valuable for all of us.
Yeah, I love talking about insurance. It's really important for people to understand, because most people don't think about or understand their insurance until they need it. And then once you had an accident, it's too late to do anything about it. You can up your insurance after that, but it doesn't help you for that crash. So it's really, really important to find out exactly what you have for insurance. Talk to your insurance agent. If you're a lot of us don't have insurance agents anymore because the companies are large. Talk to a lawyer. I'm always happy to talk to people about their insurance. Just get your insurance policy, your deck pages, and we can talk, look at it and make sure you have enough insurance. In situations like that, it's really good to have good insurance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah. People have any questions or comments, leave them. Otherwise, we'll check back in with you guys next week, hopefully.
Yep. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.